Right now, President Trump is in Japan, the second stop of his high-stakes trip to Asia. Earlier, he visited Japan's emperor at Tokyo's Imperial Palace. Tonight, Eastern Time, he'll meet with Japan's new prime minister as trade in that region remains top of mind for the president. And it comes as the administration touts a framework of a deal with China ahead of a key face-to-face meeting between President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping later this week. Joining us now from Seoul is MSNBC senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard. Also with us, Ron Insanas, CNBC contributor and publisher of The Message of the Markets on Substack, and Chihoko Goto, Vice President of Programs and Director of the Asia Program at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Vaughn, start us off here. Bring us top takeaways from the president's meetings there in Japan with the emperor and what we're watching for with the prime minister.
Right. This initial meeting with the emperor was a courtesy meeting. The president, in very short remarks, called him to be a great person. But the bigger, higher stakes meeting is going to be once the sun comes up in Japan when he meets with the new prime minister, who was just named prime minister by the parliament literally last week. She is the first female prime minister in Japan's history, but she is somebody who is an acolyte of Trump's former prime minister friend Shinzo Abe, somebody who is very much conservative, somebody who the president in his social media post on his way to Japan said that he considered to be a great person and he had heard good things and looked forward to working with. But as part of this meeting, it's worth going back to the summer when the president had agreed to an initial trade agreement with Japan with this new prime minister's trade minister, who, as part of that agreement, stipulated that Japan would provide $550 billion in funds for American projects. Where exactly is that funding coming from Japan, and for what exact specific projects, and to what extent is Japan willing to continue that commitment? Those are the outstanding questions as the president is set to meet in the hours ahead with Japan's new prime minister here for the first time.
Yeah, Chihoko, what does the background of this new prime minister tell us about how she might approach her meeting with the president?
Right. Well, again, she was only named prime minister about a week ago. And so this is her first face-to-face meeting with Trump. And ultimately, it is about building a personal rapport with President Trump. And she is, on a way, moving forward in that direction. They've had some dialogue online as well. And what we are seeing is that because she is the first Japanese female prime minister, there's a lot of excitement on the part of Japan as well as overseas as well. She is also seen as more right of center, but in a way she speaks Trump's language. She is more conservative. She wants a more muscular Japan. She wants to have strong relations with the United States, but at the same time, she wants to ensure that Japan is not trampled on by the United States. So we will be looking at what the devil will be in the details about a trade agreement, but also on the security landscape between the United States and Japan as well.
Meanwhile, Ron, let's talk about tariffs on China. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that they have reached a framework of a deal which will avert the new 100% tariff on Chinese goods that the Trump administration had threatened. And the president has this planned meeting with Xi Jinping later this week. What are your key questions about this potential framework?
Well, here we are again with another framework. We have a framework deal with Japan. We have a framework deal with South Korea. We have a framework deal with some other countries as well. But again, just delaying or taking the 100% additional tariffs off the table is leading to a positive market response on Wall Street. The notion also that China might delay or suspend its planned export controls of rare earth minerals, which are very important for the production of technology and defense goods in the United States and elsewhere, is a net positive. Where it goes from there, I think, is anyone's guess. There, as the Treasury Secretary suggested, China may restart its purchases of soybeans, which would help American farmers. They have not bought a single soybean from the U.S. this year, which is down rather substantially, as you can imagine, from a year ago. So it's taken as a net positive. We still have tariffs on Chinese goods to some extent, but all in all, the tariff rates are lower than they would have otherwise been. So we've had these really dramatic threats, and now the tariffs are slightly more manageable for the economy, but they still are keeping consumer prices higher than they would otherwise be.
Shihoko, you talked about the importance of the new Japanese prime minister establishing a personal rapport with President Trump. And here's some of what the president said about China's leader on that front earlier on Air Force One.
I have a lot of respect for President Xi. I like him a lot. He likes me a lot, I believe, and respects me. And I think he respects our country a lot. And I think we're going to have a successful transaction for both countries.
President Trump seems to think his personal relationships go a long way. They carry a lot of weight. How much does that personal relationship really matter when it comes to economic matters, particularly when dealing with the Chinese leader?
Right. Well, the United States does not necessarily have the upper hand when it comes to China. This is why the trade negotiations between the two countries is in a deadlock, essentially. And so the fact that the two leaders are meeting, because this had been on again, off again, and now we are going to have this meeting later this week, that's a good step in the right direction. But at the same time, we need to be aware, what does America want in the long term? What kind of relationship does it want with China on the economic front? And I would say that the United States needs to depend less on China for some of its critical industries, including when it comes to critical minerals. We're seeing progress in that direction. But at the same time, we need to bear in mind that the United States cannot decouple or even de-risk significantly from China. And this is about a negotiation, a discussion of equals, essentially, and to see what kind of future they can build together in the world economy.